Good morning. I'm gonna wait just a couple minutes to allow a few people to log on here. I just started the video, and at the same time, somebody fired up a leaf blower, so don't know if you can hear that in the background. Hopefully I don't get too close to the house to where it drowns me out, but I don't know. How's everybody doing this morning? Let me know that you're here and give me a little bit of a thumbs up. So this morning we're going to be looking at, good morning, Juliana. We're going to be looking at Ephesians chapter 5. So if you were with us on Sunday, David talked about Ephesians chapter 5 and went a little bit into chapter 6. And he highlighted this word that is kind of used several times throughout the book of Ephesians, but it's the word walk. And he just talked about how we're supposed to walk in love, we're supposed to walk as children of light, and we're supposed to walk in wisdom. And, the thing that precedes all of that, right? Good morning, Leslie. The thing that precedes all of that is the very first verse of chapter 5, where Paul tells us to be imitators of God as beloved children. And then he highlights these three things, and really he lays out really some pretty difficult instructions, if I'm being honest. There's some things that he tells us to avoid because it really just has no place in the body of Christ. Things like sexual immorality and impurity and covetousness. I mean, I don't know many people that don't struggle with covetousness. But he says, hey, there's no place for that. He said, let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking. Those are all out of place. But instead of just like laying out all these things not to do, he gives us something to focus on. He said, let there be thanksgiving. And then later on in the chapter, he talks about, don't be foolish, understand what the will of the Lord is, do not get drunk with wine, but, be filled with the Spirit. It's kind of interesting. I kind of find it a little funny that, that's the alternative to drinking wine and getting drunk is to be filled with the Spirit. It's like, so do I look like I'm drunk if I'm filled with the Spirit? And the answer to that may be yes. Sometimes we do seem a little odd when we're filled with the Spirit. But what I want to do is talk a little bit, that those are some of the things that Paul lays out, just general instructions, but then he gets pretty pointed. In verse 21, he says, submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. And then he starts talking about the marriage relationship. And, this is a passage I use pretty much every wedding that I have ever officiated. I use this passage. And Paul starts by saying, wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. And I think a lot of people get hung up on that, especially in today's day and age. The equality of women has come so far that this statement right here for wives to submit to their husbands gets a bad rap. It's not meant to be a bad rap. Again, it's governed by the previous verse that says we're supposed to submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. But he just says that the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. And so the way that I have always explained this, and don't worry, I'm about to talk about husbands in just a moment. The husband has been given a responsibility for the marriage. And when you're responsible for something, it's a whole lot easier to lead and to make sure that the marriage relationship is going well if you're not facing opposition every single turn. And so I think that's a big part of what Paul is talking about is let's submit to one another, let's be unified. But then my dogs are going to start barking, so then he does relate to husbands. He says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Wow. Submitting to your husband is hard, I'm sure. But husbands, dudes, we got a hard role here. Hey, we need to love our wives just like Christ loved the church. Again, we're going back up to Ephesians 5:1. Be imitators of God, right? That's the call on us, to be imitators of God and to give ourselves up for our brides. Whew. I don't know how many of us, when we are standing at the altar getting married, think, man, I am so glad I'm going to be laying my life down for this woman. We may give it some lip service, but in reality, is that really what we're thinking? But that's what we're called to do. And a lot of that is putting our pride aside, not saying, hey, you're supposed to submit to me, so I'm going to be heavy-handed, but being gentle. In fact, Paul goes on to talk about how the reason that Jesus gave himself up for the church is that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. His whole aim was for the good of the church. And so, husbands, I would ask you, is your whole aim to be serving your wife and to help her become a better person? Because I'll tell you, the heavy-handed leadership in a marriage is not going to get it. That's not going to help your wife become a better person. That's not going to help your marriage to look like what Paul's describing here. It's meant to be an actual relationship where there's give and take. Just to be honest, had a rough morning this morning, and overslept just a little bit. I'm in a hurry. When I'm trying to be in a hurry, my kids go slower. I don't know if anybody else has this. You say, hey, we don't have time, we're in a hurry, and the kids go, well, we're going to slow the throttle down. I'm supposed to eat breakfast. I'm going to stare at it for a while. That kind of thing happens. And so I am getting frustrated and flustered, and my wife can hear this as she's trying to get ready in the bedroom. And so she came out and was the gentle one and helped to calm the situation, de-escalate everything so that everybody could move on. And so that's part of the marriage relationship, is you fill in for each other. You see where things are lacking and you walk it out together. And so, again, guys, at the very end of this chapter, so chapter 5, verse 1 says, be imitators of God as beloved children. And the very last verse of the chapter says, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. I think if men and women who are married would focus on that one verse, we would truly begin to imitate God. So anyways, these are just some thoughts as I was reading chapter 5 this morning that I wanted to roll out to you guys. I hope it's been a blessing to you, and I hope that you're walking through the Ephesian challenge with us, reading through chapter 5 each day this week. because there's a lot there, and who knows what might hit you a little bit differently each time you read it. So thank you guys for spending some time with me this morning. Hope you guys have a great day.